Let me just, as a feed-in to our later discussion, I can give children a reading test, like the torch or the NAPLAN tasks or whatever. And I can look at the items the children have answered correctly and the ones they haven't. Now, we know that to answer each of the items on the NAPLAN task will probably require 3 or 4 of our high reliability strategies. If I'm going to change a child's outcome, it's hard sometimes, or it might be easy for some people, but it's hard for me to look at the task by itself and say, you know, this is the strategy that hasn't been used. When we come to look at NAPLAN data, and I want to look at that later this morning, and I've mentioned this in some of the schools that I've been working in already, what we've tried to do is to look at the task, look at the text, work out what the children needed to do to actually get the response, to put the ideas together, and say what strategy could they have used to get it? Or if they had answered it incorrectly, what might they have done to have got the correct response? And so that's slightly different from just looking at either yes or no, right or wrong. There's a distinction between the outcome and the process to get the outcome. My work is really targeting the processes. It's the thinking actions to deliver the new knowledge. I'm wanting the students to end up with new knowledge. That's my whole goal, that they know more at the end. But what I've got to do is pull levers so they can build the new knowledge. And our discussion about the independence thing is for the children to be able to do it independently, to be able to get to that point, independently along those lines. Are there any questions that come out of looking at the difference between the automatised as opposed to the scaffolded? Okay, just before we stop for morning tea, at your table, could you just have a discussion about any ideas we've talked about this morning so far that might influence your practice in the future? Were there any ideas that we've talked about that would be useful to you, that you could use in your teaching? In other words, this is the review phase. And then I'd like to quickly go around each table and hear any ideas you thought we've talked about that were useful, that you could use, or any ideas that you want to criticise. So could we spend a few minutes reviewing and collating? So let's just go around. So, yes, please, the first table. Some things you might want to pursue or discuss further, or... Come on, someone talk at that table.
We were talking, yeah, sort of, as discussions are, there's a whole lot of things coming in. One of it was about making consensus. Do you want to talk a little bit about yours? Because I've got short-term memory. I'll talk about mine and you'll...
Oh no, we were just having a discussion and I just brought up the question, well, how's that going to look at this particular school? Where is the starting point? You know, where the audit, basically.
Yep. So the audit is critical. Yes. At some point, you need the audit, and you've got to say also, what is it that you're auditing?
Yeah, that's 2 levels, John. Sorry, there's one on students, or
yep.
about their what's automated and what
yep.
what needs to be scaffolded
yep.
in terms of student evaluation. But it's also about teacher evaluation and looking at the school and auditing where we are and what do we need to do next.
Yeah, and
also the validity of those results, because the teachers who aren't doing it might rate themselves a bit
yep.
higher in that audit. So
yep.
it's about evidence of that as well.
So and you want the audit, you don't want it to be as big as possible, you want it to be as small as possible. If in fact we were talking about auditing what teachers know about getting knowledge ready, it would be easy to say to each teacher, okay, we're going to work on getting knowledge ready over term 3. For our last staff meeting, we're going to show videos of each person doing it, you know, in their teaching for 10 minutes. what knowledge do you think you'd like to be displaying about how you teach, getting knowledge ready in the video? So it could be that level of audit. And it's very important that the audit not only allows people to say what they want to say, but that they also get feedback for it. It's possible to say, hey, that's great. That idea will really contribute to where the school is going. That idea is really relevant. Now, that's something I'd forgotten about. That fits in here, sort of thing. So the audit is really bringing together the existing knowledge. We know that how good a school is rests on the knowledge in the school. It particularly rests on the knowledge about what to do when. The measure of success of each of your schools is what people know what to do when. You can have a school where the staff can tell you everything about literacy. They know volumes, but do nothing. So the audit needs to be focusing on what is being done. We're going to have morning tea in a minute. I often am in schools at morning tea time, and you can't help but hear what the dialogue is. Sometimes you'll hear teachers talking about children they've been teaching in the 10 minutes before morning tea time. The dialogue in the staff room can tell you about what's being done in classrooms. You don't need to be spending time in each classroom. Another aspect of the dialogue is where different teachers bring along student outcomes and say, this is what my kids achieved. This is how we went about getting it. One really great avenue for me to find out about the teaching is to ask the students, is to say, what actions will you be using when you read this text? That is telling me directly about the teaching. Remember, every child who we've worked with says something about us. They won't say it necessarily in words, but they'll say it in what they know, in how they know it, in their attitude to themselves, their attitude to their knowledge, the way they think about it. Every child who we've taught says things about us. So I don't need to have television cameras in every room to see how the teaching is going. I can get data about the teaching from all sorts of other sources. Now you can say, well, how valid are all these? Now, are these actually standard scores? Well, they're not. But am I fussed? If I were a school principal and I found that, say, none of my staff were talking about literacy in February, but in August they were all talking about things they were doing in their classrooms, would I want Z scores? No. I'm rapt that my staff are having dialogue about what's going on in their classrooms. They're the sort of data that we need. Now, part of the audit's going to be, doing those things. Remember, every child is actually a little knowledge source in a pair of shoes. Each little pair of shoes is a knowledge source. They're all, well, that is the truth. In the most global sense, in the most total knowledge sense, each of them is a knowing unit. Each of them, they all know things. And so in terms of gathering, when we do the audit, we can be